Can the center hold? Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there was a kingdom ruled by a wise king. The kingdom was prosperous and peaceful, and the people were happy. However, one day, a dark cloud descended over the kingdom. The neighboring kingdom, led by a power-hungry tyrant, declared war on them. The people of the kingdom were frightened. They had never been in a war before, and they didn't know what to do. The king called a council of his advisors to discuss the situation. "Can the center hold?" the king asked. "Can we defend our kingdom against this enemy?" The advisors looked at each other, unsure of what to say. Finally, one of them spoke up. "Your Majesty, our soldiers are brave and skilled, but they are outnumbered. We cannot win this war on our own." The king was disheartened. He had always believed that his kingdom was strong enough to defend itself against any enemy. But now it seemed that they were in grave danger. Just then, a young boy entered the room. His name was Richard, and he was the son of one of the king's advisors. "Your Majesty," Richard said, "I have an idea. I know I am just a boy, but I have been thinking about this a lot. What if we could find allies to help us in this war?" The king looked at Richard, surprised. "That's an interesting idea," he said. "But where would we find allies?" Richard thought for a moment. "There are other kingdoms that are friendly to us," he said. "Maybe we could ask them for help." The king called a council of his advisors to discuss the situation. The king nodded thoughtfully. "You might be onto something, Richard," he said. "We'll have to think carefully about this, but it's definitely worth considering." Over the next few days, the council discussed Richard's idea and came up with a plan. They sent messengers to their friendly kingdoms, asking for their help in the war. The messengers returned with good news. The other kingdoms were willing to send troops to help defend the kingdom. The people of the kingdom were overjoyed. They knew that they still had a difficult battle ahead of them, but they felt much more confident now that they had allies. As the days went on, the kingdom prepared for the war. The soldiers trained harder than ever before, and the people worked to fortify their defenses. Finally, the day of the battle arrived. The two armies faced each other on a plain outside the kingdom. The enemy army was huge, but the kingdom's soldiers were brave and determined. The battle was long and hard, and many lives were lost on both sides. But in the end, the kingdom emerged victorious. The enemy army retreated, and the kingdom was safe once again. The king called Richard to his throne room and thanked him for his idea. "You were right, Richard," he said. "We couldn't have won this war without the help of our allies. You helped to keep the center together." Richard beamed with pride. He knew that he had made a difference, and he felt grateful to have been able to help his kingdom in its time of need. From that day on, Richard was known throughout the kingdom as a hero. He had shown that even a young boy could make a big difference if he had the courage to speak up and share his ideas. As the kingdom celebrated its victory, the king decided to hold a feast in honor of their allies who had helped them win the war. The people of the kingdom were excited to welcome their new friends, and they prepared a grand feast with delicious food and music. Richard was especially excited to meet the soldiers from the other kingdoms. He had always been fascinated by their different customs and traditions. When the soldiers arrived, Richard greeted them warmly and asked them about their homelands. As the feast went on, Richard noticed that one of the soldiers seemed sad. He was a young man, not much older than Richard, and he looked out of place among the other soldiers. Richard approached him and asked if he was okay. The soldier looked surprised, but then smiled at Richard. "I'm fine," he said. "It's just that I miss my home. This is all so different from what I'm used to." Richard nodded understandingly. "I know what you mean," he said. "When I first came to the castle, I felt the same way. But then I realized that the people here are really kind and friendly. Maybe you will feel the same way after you've been here for a while." The soldier smiled at Richard. "Thank you," he said. "You're a wise young man. I'm glad I met you." Richard felt proud to have helped the soldier feel better. He knew that he had made a new friend, and he felt grateful for the experience. As the night wore on, the music got louder, and the people danced and sang. Richard and the soldier from the other kingdom joined in, and they laughed and danced together. The king watched from his throne, pleased to see the people from the kingdom and their allies celebrating together. He knew that it was important for the different kingdoms to come together in times of need. And Richard realized that the phrase, "Can the center hold?" didn't just apply to the kingdom's defenses. It also applied to the relationships between different people and different kingdoms. As long as they could find common ground and work together, the center would always hold. As the night came to an end, the king made a speech, thanking their allies for their help and expressing his hope for continued friendship and cooperation between their kingdoms. And Richard knew that he had been a part of something special, something that had brought people together and created a stronger, more unified kingdom. As he went to bed that night, Richard felt a sense of pride and contentment. He knew that he had helped make a difference, and he knew that his kingdom was safe and happy. And he knew that as long as they could work together and support each other, the center would always hold. The end.